we have a valve with a BLX positioner on the left, and we have the same valve with a TZIDC positioner on the right. You will note that the TZIDC positioner mounts on the opposite side of the yoke from the BLX. We have the BLX positioner on the left, the TZIDC positioner on the right, and you will note that with respect to the vent plug on the top of each actuator, that the air filter regulator is in a different position. So when the valve is converted from the BLX positioner to the TZIDC positioner, then the air filter regulator position will have to be moved with respect to the vent plug. Now, to remove the BLX positioner. First, remove the air supply from the air filter regulator and the control signal from the positioner. Then, disconnect the air connection from the positioner to the air filter regulator. Next, disconnect the air supply, the air output from the positioner to the actuator. Air can be removed along with its mounting bracket from the yoke of the actuator. The fasteners that hold the mounting bracket onto the actuator will be reused to mount the TZIDC mounting bracket to the actuator. They must be saved. Remove the cap screws and remove the BLX positioner from the actuator. Again, save the bracket mounting fasteners. They will be reused to mount the TZIDC positioner to the actuator. Next, loosen the fasteners and remove the stem plate from the side of the stem connector. Save these fasteners. They will be used to mount the stem plate required for the TZIDC positioner. Next, we will remove the air filter regulator and reposition it for the TZIDC positioner. Okay, remove the air filter regulator. And replace one of the fasteners. To secure the diaphragm chamber. Next, remove the last fastener that will support the air filter regulator. And install the air filter regulator in the correct position for the TZIDC positioner. Okay, now the air filter regulator is in the correct position on the actuator with respect to the vent plug for the mounting of the TZIDC. If it is necessary to rotate the actuator prior to mounting the TZIDC positioner, complete the following steps. first temporarily connect air pressure to the air connection of the actuator. Then increase the air pressure until the valve moves off its seat. Okay, making sure that the plug is off the seat so that the plug cannot possibly turn against the seat, which would ruin the seating surface. Use a blunt chisel and a hammer and loosen the yoke lock nut. Then, if necessary, rotate the actuator into the new position. This step may or may not be required for you to mount the TZIDC positioners. There is clearance. You may wish to mount them with the actuator in its original position. Then, using the hammer and chisel, tighten the actuator down, tighten the yoke lock nut, secure the actuator to the valve. We install the stem plate on the split stem connector, and we reuse the two fasteners that were removed from the stem plate for the BLX. Next, we will install the feedback clamp base and the pickup bracket on the stem plate. And the feedback clamp bracket is not symmetric. The feedback clamp bracket is installed with the opening for the pickup bracket offset towards the bottom of the base. Loosely install the feedback clamp bracket on the stem plate. Then insert pickup bracket in the clamp base. As shown, making sure that the bracket extends far enough so the carrier feedback pin on the arm of the positioner will not contact the end of the bracket while the valve is stroking. Then tighten the bracket to secure tighten the bases to secure the bracket. Okay. The next thing that must be done is to set the position of the carrier pin in the lever arm for the travel of the valve. Most of the valves have 3/4 travel. The lever arm is marked in millimeters, 10, 20, 30, so the value must be converted from inches to millimeters, and then the carrier pin assembly is centered in that position on the lever arm. That's done by means of adjusting this nut on the back to loosen it so it slides back and forth. In the case of a 3/4 travel valve, the conversion to millimeters is 19.1 millimeters, so the feedback pin for 3/4 travel valve should be centered at a mark that represents 19.1 on this scale on the lever arm. You need to install the lever and the carrier pin assembly on the back of the positioner. The output shaft on the back of the positioner has a flat, and at the base of the shaft there is a white disc with an arrow pointer. There's also an arc embossed in the back of the positioner. During operation, the pointer the arrow on the end of the white pointer must stay within that embossed arc. If it goes outside of that, the positioner will not function properly. Now we insert the lever assembly on the shaft and tighten the fastener to hold it in place. Install the mounting bracket for the positioner on the positioner. The mounting bracket has a spacer behind it, which offsets the bracket slightly from the positioner to clear the air vent on the bottom of the positioner. There are two cap screws that go through the bracket and through the spacer, and there's a washer between the cap screw and the bracket. So we will loosely assemble the bracket to the back of the positioner using the set of holes farthest from the positioner output shaft. We'll assemble this finger tight because the vertical position of the positioner and the mounting bracket needs to be adjusted once the mounting bracket is assembled to the actuator. We will attach the mounting bracket of the positioner to the yoke of the actuator, making sure that when we do so, the carrier pin fits in the slot in the bracket. We then insert the fasteners through the bracket into the yoke and install a jam nut on the other side. These are the same fasteners that were removed from the BLX assembly. Next, tighten the fasteners to hold the bracket securely to the yoke of the actuator. The split stem connector on each actuator has a line, horizontal line scored across it. That line is the travel indicator and can be used to indicate the position of the plug in the valve by comparing it to the travel scale on the side of the yoke. Okay, the next step is to apply air directly to the actuator to drive the stem to mid-stroke, and that can be observed by watching the indicator line in the back of the stem connector line up with the midpoint of travel on the travel scale. Now with the valve at mid-stroke, we adjust the vertical position of the positioner on the mounting bracket so that the lever on the back of the positioner is horizontal. And then we tighten the fasteners to secure the positioner to the mounting bracket. Now that the positioner has been properly located on the bracket, we want to remove the temporary air connection. Remove the pipe plug from output 2 on the positioner. Okay. Next, we must install the gauge block assembly on the side of the positioner. The gauge block assembly has 3 O-rings which must be inserted in the side of the gauge block assembly, and has 2 fasteners with washers that secure it to the position. We install the gauge block assembly on the side of the positioner, making sure that the O-rings are seated inside of the gauge block assembly. Then we install it so that the insert the fasteners into the side of the gauge block and tighten them to secure the gauge block to the side of the positioner. Install our air fittings in the positioner. Okay, finally, we install our air tubing from output 1 to the base of the actuator. Finally, we make our air connection from our air filter regulator to the supply of the positioner. Okay, the following are the basic steps for the calibration of the TZIDC positioner. Those steps are contained in the instruction manual shipped with each positioner. First, it's required that the air supply be connected to the positioner and at least a 4 milliamp control signal be connected to positioner so that the display energizes. Next, to begin the calibration sequence, press the mode button and hold until adjust LIN appears in the display. Release, press mode button again until countdown reaches 0. Release, the auto calibration sequence begins. Basic auto calibration sequence is complete and the positioner is ready for automatic operation. Before you do that, parameter 2.5 shut open the value should be adjusted to 99.0. In order to do that, follow these steps. First, switch to the configuration level by pressing the up and down arrow buttons and then enter. And then release enter and wait for the countdown to complete. Now in the configuration area of the positioner. From there, we need to change to parameter group 2, and that is done by pressing the mode and enter buttons and using the up and down arrows to switch parameters. We're now in parameter group 2. Next, we need to select the parameter within that group, parameter 2.5. We hold the mode button, and press the up or down arrow to reach 2.5, and release, and we see that it is off. We need to change that to 99.0. We do that by pressing the up or down arrow until that value is set. Press the down arrow so it reaches 99.0. Then we need to save that and return to the automatic operation. We press the mode button and proceed to parameter 2.8, which is exit. And at 2.8, we press enter Wait for the countdown to complete, and release the button, and now that value has been saved and we're back in automatic operation.